Welcome to For the Masses podcast. My name is John Barrett, your host. Hey, it's 2023. I'm back with a banger featuring my best friend. But before I tell you who it is and what she does and how important she is to me, we got admin tasks we have to take care of. Please follow us on all platforms at For the Masses podcast and on YouTube at JB the Masses podcast. Please follow us on Spotify. Please give us a review and a follow. And don't forget to hit the bell. It's 2023, which means new goals. This is episode 50. Episode 50. I took a little hiatus to refocus, but I'm back. And we're going to have episodes dropping every week, Friday at 8 a.m. Friday at 8 a.m., okay? So today I have someone that's really, really close to me. She's my best friend. And we're going to talk about her experience at the motherland. The beautiful Jessa Royer. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, I'm happy to have you on the podcast. This is your first time on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
We've been waiting to episode 50, and it's finally here.
Well, like 5 weeks.
Hey.
10 weeks.
Hey, stop. Took a hiatus for a break. But, you're very beautiful, and
thank you.
To commemorate this moment, we gotta do some cheers.
Okay, let's do it.
2023, bless, new goals, everything up.
Yes.
Don't worry, it's sparkling cider.
Yeah.
You're gonna let it drink.
I'm gonna set that down for a second.
Mm-hmm. So before we get into your story and what brought you to Madagascar, let's tell everyone a little bit about yourself, where you're from.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm from Omaha, Nebraska. And I came to DC simply after applying to law school in Howard. But before I came to DC, I applied to the Peace Corps because I wanted to just travel, and I didn't know how to do it. I was on a budget, and I was like, I want to serve and help people. And I ended up in Madagascar. I didn't get to the first country of choice, which was Fiji, actually.
No.
Madagascar chose me. I didn't speak any of the language, but that's where I ended up. For
sure. And what gave you a spirit that wanted to serve?
I guess part of it is the work that I did in college. So I was working along the lines of doing criminal justice reform, and I was working in a lot of youth facilities. So in middle schools, in after-school programs, coaching volleyball, all these sorts of things. And I just kind of learned to really love the children. And I really wanted to just make a change in people's lives. And I feel like I was a good fit for it.
For sure. And was Peace Corps your first option, or did you explore other opportunities to travel and to help people?
No, Peace Corps actually wasn't my first option. I wanted to travel abroad through college, but again, I couldn't really afford it. And I also looked at programs like AmeriCorps, but Peace Corps was a huge opportunity because you get to travel abroad. It's a much longer program. I had never been out of the country before, so it was a really amazing opportunity to start that way. For
sure. And you went to Peace Corps, and they selected you to go to the poorest country in the world at the time, at that point in time, Madagascar.
Mm-hmm.
So how was that experience? Well, before we go into your experience at Madagascar, how was your experience getting ready to go to Madagascar?
Oh my gosh. It was so nerve-wracking. So one of the things I'll never forget was I was applying for my government passport, and we had to send our passport a special route through a post office that went through, I think, Texas, maybe. And we had to route it a special way for it to go straight to whatever office was in Texas. And I accidentally sent mine to a completely different office, and I don't even know where it ended up.
Oh my gosh.
And I couldn't find my passport. I couldn't track it. I didn't know where it went. And I was calling people, and they were like, hey, if we don't get it in time, you might just not get to go. And I don't know, but just by God's grace, I don't know, they called me and they were like, yeah, it's here, it's in Texas. And I was like, wow. I don't know how I got there. Yeah. So that was one thing I was like, oh. and also just like preparing your medical records to go abroad. You have to get your typhoid shot, your yellow fever shot, your rabies shots, and they have to take dental records. So just in case something happens to you, you take pictures of all your tattoos. You know, you have to make sure you're medically cleared and you're cleared psychologically, because you're going to a really poor country that doesn't have, you know, English-speaking therapists readily available, especially if you're in a village. So, like, you have to do psychiatrist tests, and you have to make sure your medicine can be accessed while in country. So if you have, you know, sort of type of medicine or illness, like, you have to make sure that it can be tended to.
For sure. And what about, like, the language? Like, how did you learn language? You have to do classes. How long did that take before you got immersed in the country?
So I bought, like, a book of Malagasy phrases, and I thought it would help, but I had no idea how to pronounce things. And Madagascar is actually kind of different, because Malagasy is only spoken in Madagascar. It's spoken nowhere else in the world. And so I knew that French was a base of Malagasy, and there's a lot of French speakers, and so I started taking French classes about, I don't know, maybe 6 months before I left. Maybe less than that. But I didn't really get a real taste of Malagasy until I landed in the country officially, and to hear it actually spoken. I listened to some videos on YouTube, but it's not a widely spoken language. Madagascar is only the size of Texas.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah.
That's beautiful. And for everyone watching and listening, Madagascar is the same Madagascar from the movie from when you were all kids.
Yes, but please, there's no elephants and giraffes there, please.
There's no elephants and giraffes there, everyone. No, but that's incredible. And it speaks to your discipline, and the fact that you wanted to, like, learn the language, and you bought a book, and then you took French early. That's amazing.
Yeah, so when I officially got to the country, though, we had about maybe about 2 weeks or so where we were just, like, all the volunteers were together. We were living on, like, a Peace Corps campus, and we were taking classes with local teachers. And then about 2 weeks in, once we learned how to say hello, goodbye, and all these very basic phrases, they moved us in with the host family. And moving with the host family was really tough, because it was like, couldn't communicate. I couldn't do anything. I just had to figure it out, and you know, you have to kind of be okay with looking stupid. But you do learn. One of the things that I remember too that was funny is Vuki Bay was like, it means, like, I'm very full. But if you accidentally mess it up with the word Bevuka, which is like, you're pregnant.
Oh my god.
And so the locals are like, what? What are you talking about? It was easy to mix up words. But yeah, so after I moved in with my host family, it kind of clicked. I wouldn't say I was fully fluent. And then I practiced with our teachers, and we would do like daily classes, Mondays through Fridays. And yeah, we learned the Malagasy, and then once we figured out where we were going to be doing our service, we learned the dialect.
Yeah.
So for some people, the dialect was completely different from regular Malagasy. Mine was very similar. So that was really good. And then about our 3-month mark is when they threw us back into our village by ourselves, and it was a free-for-all.
Yeah, for sure. So, and I know that was intimidating and probably scary. But before we get into that, what's the mission of Peace Corps? Like what is Peace Corps trying to do in these remote places? Yeah, so
there's 3 main goals. One of them is like to bring culture from your country back to America, and then America's culture to the other country. And I'm forgetting the third one, but that's the 2 big goals.
Yeah, for sure.
I know the third one, but I can't remember right now.
It's okay.
Yeah.
So noble work for sure.
Yeah.
And how did you feel about the mission, like, going into Madagascar?
I think that it's easy to, sign up to be a volunteer in another country and get really wrapped up in the idea of thinking that people who are from an impoverished country are less than. or that they're not as smart as you, or that they just need your help. And it's very, very easy to be like a savior to people who don't want you to be their savior, and you're not their savior.
Yeah.
So I kind of forgot where I was going with that, but yeah, that was one of the like toughest things that like you had to kind of hurdle over at the beginning is you're not entering their community to solve their problems. You're entering their community to be a helper for them. So for them to find resources, for them to help them brainstorm, and also just like get a sense of how things are outside of their community, and teach them things, and talk about politics on the other side of the world, and different cultures and customs that they might not have ever experienced or even heard of.
Yeah, that's beautiful and noble. So how did you make the shift from like the savior mindset of, hey, I'm an American, I'm coming here with my education and like trying to come in and like fix their country, and say like, how did you get out of that mindset?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that like a lot of volunteers do, I was an English teacher, and one of the very things that a lot of teachers assume is when they go into their community is that they're going to want to have English clubs. And so that was one of the first things I did. I created a middle school, high school, elementary, and an adult club. And it turned out that people didn't really want that. The adults stopped showing up, the kids stopped showing up, and my middle school kids, they got too much of it. I was already their teacher in the regular classroom. They didn't want to show up on the weekends.
Yeah.
And the high school one kind of stuck. That was only once a week, but I realized that they didn't want to just learn English. And a lot of the kids, my classes for sure, I was teaching 6th and 7th graders. The 6th graders, it was their very first year of English, and they had been going several years in French. So it was like they didn't need a third and fourth language. They were already speaking Malagasy, their dialect, French, and now English. So it was like
it was a lot.
It was a lot. One of the things that I learned that while I was there was that I had to try to help meet their basic needs before I start trying to teach them English. So one of the requests that came in to me was trying to make sure that we could route the water from the top of the mountain to come down to the base of the mountain. Because you need water. You need it to cook, you need to clean, wash your clothes, you need it to drink. It's a basic necessity. And as I was working at the school, I noticed that the kids weren't even being able to wash their hands. So that was where I started, was starting to teach about basic hygiene.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I did was bring a bucket into my classroom and bought soap. And every single time they would use the restroom, it was like they had to come back in and wash their hands. And then we talked a lot about how to build some sort of piping system to bring the water down faster, especially when it hadn't rained and it was hot. How to keep water at the base of the mountain and run it back down the mountain, so that they could meet a very basic need.
Real needs. And I was thinking, and I agree with that. Like, hey, like these people, like we're coming in here with like our beliefs and the things that we think people need, but in reality they need something else. And the president of Rwanda, there was a LGBTQ plus like riot in his country, and he shut it down with like military power. And he said that we're not doing this. We have other things to worry about, meaning that hey, we have other like basic needs to worry about, as opposed to like LGBTQ plus civil rights is something I think you deal with when your GDP becomes a little closer to what we do here in America.
Yeah. So one thing that's coming up right now in my head is there was a family of little girls that would come to my English club initially, and they would come to my yard and they would play and come say hi, and some of the girls stopped showing up after a while. And I noticed that one of the girls was limping around, like on the road. She had an infection in her foot and she couldn't walk. And so therefore, English was not the first thing on her mind.
Yeah, for sure.
Her sister was carrying her around, and they had to do what they could. So I had them come over to my house, and I cleaned out her foot with my first aid kit and gave her socks to wear because I didn't have shoes for her. And after that, it was like, hey, like, I'm going to go to the doctor and make sure her foot doesn't fall off.
Yeah.
because she's walking on a dirt road and her foot was so sliced, she was losing, like, the end of her heel. And she had an infection that was about the size of, like, a golf ball of, like, pus filled in the top of her foot. And so, being in such a small community, we had to wait for the doctors to come to us. So we had a little local, like, clinic, but there wasn't always doctors in it. The person who was usually on duty was also the janitor. She didn't have a medical license. She didn't have a nursing license. She was just someone they had hired. So we waited until the market day, which was on Mondays. So we had to wait a couple of days to come back around, and then the doctors would come into town. So I went over to the clinic to try to get the doctor. And, you know, I waited in line for almost 3 or 4 hours. Because not only is the doctors only comes up every so often, there's tons of newborns in the area that need their shots. Because you have things like rabies and dirty water. And, you know, the saddest thing was knowing that, like, this girl could possibly lose her foot to infection because her family couldn't afford the money. So I waited in line on market day, and the medicine that she needed was less than $1. But her family, I went to her family's house and I said, hey, your daughter's going to lose her foot if you don't do something about this. But they couldn't afford it. And so you experience things like that where it's like, of course they're not thinking about learning English. You have kids who are so poor they can't even attend school because they have to work in the farms, or, you know. But there's also a huge wealth gap. You have people who were in my community who had big screen TVs and big stereos, and you know, they had servants in their house, and then you had children walking alongside the road asking for food. So
it was like a huge culture shock, you know, coming to that country. And do you feel like you left the same?
Oh no, absolutely not. I felt like a little bit closer to, I guess, myself in a way, because, you know, like, you feel like you're a part of like a bigger culture. And for me, like, growing up in a mostly white state and being in a country for almost a year where everyone looked like me, everyone had the same skin tone as me, and I didn't have to question who I was and my safety, and, you know, if people are going to use racial slurs against me, it brought me actually closer to myself and my being, and made me want to reach out to my family members and see where I came from.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful, that's noble, and you felt like you grew while you were there.
Oh, a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
And so when you came back to the States, how was that? Like, how was it shock again?
When I came back to the States, one of the first things I saw was some girl with blue hair and tattoos, and I was like, oh my gosh! Because the women in my community, it would be 95 degrees outside, and they'd have hats on their heads and long skirts and socks, and they wouldn't show their arms. You know, people didn't wear crop tops in the village that I was in. I mean, you know, communities that were on the beach and they were really, really hot, and by the water you'd see women wearing what was called a lamba, and it's like the fabric that you tie around here. And, you know, they would have their shoulders out. But in my community, it was very, very conservative. You know, even having a nose ring was something that I felt uncomfortable about, because some of the kids were like, oh my gosh, you know. So yeah, when I came back and I saw that, I was like, what is happening? The other thing is, my body did not respond well to all of the toxins and preservatives and crap that entered my bloodstream again. You know, I was eating very natural from farmers in my community, and and when I came back, everything's pumped up with sodium and all this stuff, and my skin was not having it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. No, that's an amazing experience, and that experience changed you for the rest of your life. You would say?
Mm-hmm. I would say that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're happy you did it.
Yeah, and it was my first time being independent. I lived completely alone, and I really couldn't rely on a lot of people at first because I didn't speak the language very well, and I couldn't call my family because I didn't have service sometimes, and we're 10 hours apart or whatever the time difference is. So it really was an opportunity for me to like really just like grow. I started journaling and meditating, and I started really just like slowing down and taking care of my hair and cooking good meals and finding time to just like go out and meet with new people.
No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah. And so there's a lot of people who listen to this podcast who are really big on growth and self-development. Mm-hmm. So, but they're scared to do something like you did, Jessa. Mm-hmm. They're scared to immerse themselves in a whole other country. So,
yeah, it's scary.
Look, what got you the courage up to do that, and like, how can they?
Well, I guess the thing that I would say is that like the scariest things are like sometimes the best things. So, and you never get to try anything new if you're just like walking around scared, and you'll never experience the beauty of life if you're never brave enough to take the jump.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a gamble. I had no idea what to expect.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not like I went to Jamaica and I could go look at Instagram and, mm-hmm. And there's a lot of different, misconceptions about Madagascar, obviously, based on the movie. So It's like, yeah, I didn't know what to expect, but like, you just kind of have to take the jump.
Awesome. And that sounded like it was an amazing experience. So what are you doing now?
Yeah, so like I said, I'm in DC. I'm just about to finish my last year of law school and graduate in May. And I'm at Howard, and I'm hoping that I'll be working with a nonprofit or maybe DC Justice Lab, wink wink. And I'm really looking to do policy in prison and criminal justice reform. Going into this next chapter of my life.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So maybe Meek Mill and Mr. Rubin will pick up your project. They do a lot of prison reform.
Oh, okay. And Kim Kardashian too?
No. She doesn't do prison reform. Good company. It's beautiful. And like, what makes you want to do that?
Well, I guess I can keep a long story short, but when I was talking earlier about working with youth, one of the projects that I was working on was recording youth interactions with police. And I was working with youth in the Douglas County Youth Facility. Incarcerated youth who, had wide ranges of criminal offenses, and talking about how their interactions with police, being Black males, were, and asking them about how they think that police could do a better job and limit interactions with Black youth in order to eventually reduce the population of Black males that are entering the carceral system.
No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And like, what made you want to pursue that instead of going to like corporate transactional law, making tons of money? Instead, you want to do some more noble work. And it is noble work. Yeah,
I mean, law school for me is not like about the money. Like, I had to stick to what my heart and my gut was telling me, and do something that I loved and something that I find can have a positive impact on people, rather than chasing after the money. Because God's always going to provide for me. It's always the money will be there. So there's no need to chase it when I could have a very fulfilling life without having to do 90 hours a week and never spend time with my children and my family and take care of the home that I'm working towards. So those are things that I value more in life than money.
Yeah, and so I mean, I think that is easier said than done for a lot of people. But what gave you that like seed that, hey, I want to help people, I want to do this?
I mean, it's been on my heart for a really long time. And, I'm the type of person where if I don't have an interest in something, I can't fully commit to it. And, I couldn't even imagine myself trying to work a job that I don't love.
Yeah.
Or I don't have a passion for.
Yeah.
And I see no point in trying to burn myself out for, making money for someone else.
Yeah, for sure.
I see no point in that, especially if I'm not making the impact that I want to make. And I see myself doing that forever in everything that I do. I don't want to chase after things for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. And I appreciate you for jumping on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So people can find you at Jessa Royer on LinkedIn and Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And you recently had a special project. And you've recently left the country to go do some really cool things in a country called Geneva.
Yeah. The country's called Switzerland.
Switzerland, Geneva.
Geneva, Switzerland.
Geneva, Switzerland.
Yeah, so in the beginning of December, I was working on a project with the UN through my school. My professor was recently appointed to a director position for the United Nations Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. It's a really long name, but basically we, as a class, we individually got to pick cities all over the United States. And I chose Omaha, Nebraska, from where I'm from. And I was supposed to be talking about how to better reach the goals for Black communities in Omaha and some of the major issues that Black individuals are facing back in Omaha. And so when I presented at the UN in December, I talked a lot about climate issues and specifically air quality issues, land quality issues, water quality issues. One of the biggest things that I found that many Black individuals were facing in Omaha is high rates of asthma due to the coal burning plant that has been in their community since the 1950s. And it's interesting because the city was supposed to remove the coal burning plant, and they have removed, I think, at least 2 of them. But the third one that they left was, I believe, intentionally left in the Black community. And they've extended the term of the coal burning for another 3 years with no end date in sight. I find it interesting that they would continue to burn coal in a community that's highly vulnerable to disease, has high rates of poverty, and with no regard for their health. And has no urgency to create a climate action plan to reduce the negative effects of the air that are entering these Black individuals.
Al Gore was right. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Anyways.
Climate action plan.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too that is directly affecting the very same community and almost wholly within the Florence area of Omaha is it's a Superfund lead site. So the lead is contaminated, the soil is contaminated with lead. And people can die from lead poisoning. Like it's extremely harmful, especially to children of young ages. It can affect their brain development. And this is all within the same area. You also have a sewage plant right off the river that is not fully filtering out the chemicals that are entering the water. You have high levels of arson and E. coli. Yeah, that's entering the water and potentially entering the bodies of Black people in Omaha and all residents of Omaha. This is the same population of people who, if you're impoverished, then your first thought isn't, I'm going to go buy a water filter. It's I'm going to make sure my family eats.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I finally find it extremely disappointing, having been from Omaha and, but also very rewarding that, like, people outside of Nebraska can learn about these issues and maybe take some action. Hopefully,
yeah,
sure. So
yeah,
that was the point.
That's a beautiful opportunity that you had, especially at a young age. And so, what can people do in their own communities? Like, is it congressional letters? Like, what can they do to like impact now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that really change starts on a very local level. So for me, I wouldn't start with your congressman. I wouldn't start with your senators. I would start with your city council.
Mm-hmm.
Start with your mayor. Your any sort of boards, your utilities boards, your whoever, the board of education. There's all these. Your county clerk.
Mm-hmm.
All these people that are running your local governments and dictating where funds go and making major decisions for local residents. Those are the people that you need to be starting with, and then you build it from there.
Incredible.
Yeah, you build it from there.
That's amazing. And I want to give you your flowers.
Where's your flowers at?
I don't have any right now. I want to give you your flowers while you're here, because it matters. It matters that you're doing this noble work and you're being a champion for the marginalized.
Yes, thank you.
And I know me and Trey, the producer, appreciates it.
Shout out.
Shout out to Trey. But we appreciate it.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Thank you. Gosh. But, and thank you for joining For the Masses podcast.
Yes. A pleasure.